like whenever business gets a bit quiet, everyone jumps to the same conclusion. They need to do more marketing. Honestly, before I joined the team at Little Marketing, that would have been my answer too. More social media, maybe some Google ads, maybe the website needs updating. It just feels like the obvious thing to do. But one of the biggest things I've learned since joining the team is that marketing gets blamed for a lot of problems it didn't actually create. And that's been a bit of a mindset shift for me because sometimes marketing isn't actually the problem. In this episode, I want to look at why marketing is so often the first thing we blame when business slows down, what might actually be going wrong instead, and why figuring out the real problem has to come before jumping to a solution. I'll also share a few of the things I've picked up from watching how the team here at Little Marketing approaches that process. I still remember one of the first planning meetings I sat in on. We'd been talking for about 20 minutes and nobody had mentioned social media. I genuinely thought we would be brainstorming Instagram posts. Nobody had mentioned ads, no mention of websites, nothing. And I remember sitting there thinking, hang on, aren't we supposed to be talking about marketing? Instead, Michael Carver, the director here at Little Marketing, was asking questions like, where do your inquiries come from? What happens after someone contacts you? Why do customers choose you? Then it clicked. Those questions weren't avoiding marketing, they were trying to pinpoint whether marketing was even the problem to begin with. I think a lot of us assume that if business slows down, marketing must be the thing that's broken. But what if it isn't? I've started noticing that when something goes wrong in a business, marketing is often the first thing people point to because it's the most visible part of the business. Nobody walks into the office and says, maybe our inquiry process needs work. Instead, it's, we should probably post more. Or maybe it's time for a new website. Or my personal favorite, should we just change the logo? Marketing ends up carrying the blame because it's the easiest thing to see, not necessarily because it's the thing that's broken. I reckon everyone has their own version of this. Mine is buying a new diary. Every time I convince myself this is the diary that's finally going to get my life together. Spoiler, it never is. It's just giving me the feeling that I'm making a fresh start. Businesses can fall into the same trap. When things feel slow, it's tempting to redesign the website, post more often, run some more ads, or refresh the branding because doing something feels better than sitting still. But activity isn't the same as progress. If marketing wasn't the real issue in the first place, you've just ended up with a nicer diary. One of the biggest lessons I've learned over the past few months is that before you start changing things, you need to understand what's actually causing the problem. Because if you solve the wrong problem, you haven't really solved anything. Imagine you're running a business. You tell us we're not getting enough customers. My first thought 6 months ago would have been, let's do more marketing. But now I'd probably ask, how many inquiries are you already getting? Because if the answer is actually we get heaps, then suddenly we're having a completely different conversation. Your business is already generating opportunities, but they're just losing them afterwards. So if you spend thousands of dollars generating even more inquiries, would it help? Maybe a little, but it would also mean sending more people into a process that's already leaking customers. How do you actually know if marketing is the problem? Maybe you've never actually stopped to ask that question. Maybe you've just assumed it is. Now, this was probably the biggest light bulb moment for me. I'd always thought marketing's job was just to get people through the door. Turns out that's only part of it. Think about your own experiences as a customer. Have you ever visited a website because someone recommended a business? Marketing did its job. It got your attention, it got you to the website, it convinced you to inquire. But what happens next is just as important. Maybe you wait 3 days for a reply, maybe nobody gets back to you at all, or maybe the quote's confusing and maybe you're left wondering what happens next. And here's what I've realized. The customer doesn't separate those different experiences. They don't think, well, the marketing was great, but the follow-up wasn't. To them, it's all just one experience with your business. So every interaction either builds trust or chips away at it. That's why I've started thinking about marketing very differently. It's not just about getting someone's attention, it's about making sure the experience that follows lives up to the expectation your marketing created. Your customer experience, your communication, your sales process, even the speed at which you reply to an email. Every little interaction is shaping what someone thinks about your business. This could be why marketing sometimes gets unfairly blamed, because the symptom is obvious. Business is slow, inquiries are down, sales have dropped, but the cause isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's marketing, sometimes it's positioning, sometimes it's the offer, sometimes it's the customer experience, but sometimes it's something completely different. That's one of the biggest differences I've noticed since working in a business that takes on a consultative approach. Something that's become crystal clear in these little marketing planning meetings is that nobody rushes to the answer. Nobody says, right, let's get you on TikTok. Let's redesign your website. The conversation slows down. Everyone starts asking, what's actually happening here? Because before you decide what to do next, you've got to work out what's really holding the business back. And I think that's a completely different way of looking at marketing. I think that's the hard part because when you're inside your own business every day, how do you know? How do you know whether it's a marketing problem or a sales problem or a positioning problem or a customer experience problem? I don't think that's always obvious. And honestly, I think that's why these planning meetings are so valuable. They're not about jumping straight to the solution, they're about making sure you're solving the right problem first. So, how do you actually figure out what the problem is? This is probably the question I've been thinking about the most since all of this clicked for me. If marketing isn't always the problem, how do you actually know what is? And honestly, I don't think that's always easy. When you're inside your own business every single day, you're incredibly close to it. You're answering emails, managing staff, managing deadlines, serving customers, trying to win new work, trying to keep existing customers happy. You're making hundreds of decisions every week. When you're that close to something, it's really hard to step back and look at it objectively. And I think that's where having someone outside the business becomes really valuable. It's not necessarily that they know your business better than you do, it's just they're able to look at it from a perspective that you can't always have when you're in the middle of it every single day. It's so easy to jump to the obvious conclusion. Business is quiet, it must be marketing. Because marketing is the bit you can see. The website, the Instagram page, the Google Ads account, the EDM you haven't sent in 3 months. They're all tangible things, but often the real problem is less obvious. Maybe people don't understand what makes your business different, or you're attracting the wrong type of customer, or inquiries are coming through, but they aren't being followed up consistently, or customers don't understand your offer, or your pricing creates uncertainty, or your messaging sounds exactly like everybody else. And that's the thing, those problems don't always announce themselves, you have to go looking for them. I think what surprised me most about working in a consultancy is that nobody is in a rush to recommend marketing. I genuinely thought every planning meeting would end with Michael saying, great, let's get some content out, or we should definitely run some ads. Sometimes, sure, that is what happens, but only after everyone's confident that they've identified the real problem. Because imagine if a business came to us saying we need more leads and we immediately launched a campaign. What if 6 weeks later we discovered they'd actually been losing half their inquiries because nobody was calling people back? The marketing would have worked, but it just wouldn't have solved the business problem. That completely changed how I think about strategy. Strategy isn't just deciding what to do, it's deciding what not to do. It's making sure you're solving the right problem before investing time, money, and energy into the solution. Now, on to this week's marketing crime, which is what I'm calling panic posting. Business gets a bit quiet, so suddenly it's quick, let's post something. Then it's maybe we should boost it. Actually, let's run a promotion. Maybe we just need to post more. And look, I'm not saying posting more is a bad thing, but if the real issue is that people don't understand what makes your business different, or they're dropping off after they inquire, or they're confused about your offer, then posting another photo or video or reel probably isn't going to fix that. It's a bit like trying to talk louder when the problem is that actually nobody understands what you're saying. Sometimes the answer isn't more marketing, it's understanding what's actually stopping people from buying first. I want to leave you with one little challenge. If your first instinct this week is, we need more marketing, pause for a second and ask yourself, what evidence do I have that marketing is actually the problem? Are inquiries down or are conversions down? Are people finding us or are they leaving confused? Are we attracting the wrong customers or are we attracting the right customers and losing them afterwards? Even spending 10 minutes answering those questions could completely change what you decide to do next. All right, so this week's marketing note from my desk is this. Marketing can't fix the wrong problem. I actually love this one because it's something I'm trying to remind myself of too. The obvious answer isn't always the right answer. And I think that's why I've enjoyed sitting in on planning meetings so much. They're not trying to find the fastest solution, they're trying to find the right one. Because once you've identified what's actually holding the business back, everything else becomes much clearer. Anyway, that's this week's marketing note from my desk. If there's one thing I'm taking away from this week, it's that marketing isn't always about jumping to the solution. It's about asking the right questions first. Because if you solve the wrong problem, even great marketing won't fix it. If this has given you something to think about, make sure you subscribe. The goal is pretty simple: to keep sharing what we're learning here at Little Marketing and hopefully help more businesses get better at marketing along the way.